Steven Andress here for the lines.com, playpicks.com, joined by our golf writer, John Haslbauer, on Twitter at PGA Tout. You can find me on Twitter at Steven Andress1, Steven with a PH. And in this video, we're going to be talking about the 2022 Mexico Open. And John, I think we need to have a little bit of a tutorial to start things here, because if you go to the lines.com, you find your tournament preview here on the homepage. And if you're finding us later in the week and you don't see it in our top four, you can go under odds, under John Haslbauer, and click on the Mexico Open preview. And the first thing that stands out, my friend, is that it is Jon Rahm at the top at plus 350 or plus 450, depending where you shop, and literally everybody else. There's an Abe Answer at 15 to 1 or 16 to 1, and everybody else is 20 to 1 or longer. So, I mean, this is like Tiger Woods territory. We haven't seen a guy with those short of odds at the top of a golf board in some time, let alone a guy who hasn't won since the U.S. Open, for God's sake. So, kind of a special circumstance we're running into here this week.
Yeah. It's been 10 months since Jon Rahm won, and he's getting the Tiger Woods treatment anyway. I mean, you got no choice basically with the other adversaries in this group. I'm not going to say he should be priced much longer than that, to be honest. Obviously, I'm not going to bet that. I think there's a few other like top 10 bets you can bet at the same number that are a lot more viable, in my opinion. But I think if you're really nervous about Rahm, there's eventually going to be some markets, I would imagine, on a couple sports books that just let you bet the field without Rahm. So I think if you're very nervous about Rahm, I personally am not, but if you are, then maybe you bet a few more placement bets this week, and maybe you consider that market in this extreme circumstance. But the way I see it, it really puts a premium at the top and actually gets you some very palatable numbers on the rest of the board, which I was not actually expecting. I thought we would just get short numbers on everybody, but all the win equity is tied up with Rahm. So as long as he doesn't win, there's a lot of opportunity here that I didn't expect to see. So actually some pretty good numbers on some guys that are, not the most attractive bets, but it could be worse.
I'm not going to lie. I kind of agree with you. I was anticipating having to roll my eyes at the outright odds of like 6 to 8 guys that were shorter than 20 to 1. Instead, it's Rahm at the top, and we got a bunch of guys that are no shorter than 20 to 1. So I'm with you there. In that regard, I'm pleasantly surprised, but it's still jarring to see a guy at the top with those short of odds in this era of the PGA Tour. Let's scroll down here a little bit in your preview. You have your field at a glance, so people can go back to the site and check that out a little bit later. But let's start here in this video after we just talked about the favorites with the course. And excuse me for all those that speak Spanish or have great Hispanic chops as their second language, because I'm going to butcher this name, but Vidanta Vallarta. John, did I get that right? And tell us a little bit about this place.
You're probably asking the wrong guy, because I get the great bailout of only having to write about this. So I usually don't expose myself for whether I know how to pronounce the names in the field or the name of the course. But Vidanta Vallarta is my best attempt at pronouncing this place. What you need to know about it: it's long. It's just under 7,500 yards, and it plays at sea level, so you're not really getting any additional distance out of this. It's going to play the true almost 7,500 yards, and it's on Paspalum greens, or grass throughout, which means that you're not going to get a lot of rollout. It's a sticky surface, so where your ball lands is essentially where it's going to roll to. So I think that's important to note this week for the longer drivers and the guys with the longest carry distance. I think even if you want to talk about a guy like Abraham Answer, who's not a very long hitter and he really relies on the rollout, he's going to be in trouble here. And I see some very short odds on him. He's kind of a fade for me this week. I understand the Mexico angle of it, but for me personally, I want to see bombers. There's a lot of length in this course, and that's really going to set you up for second shot opportunities. Approach is always going to be important on the PGA Tour. So I think I see a lot of birdies to get on this course. I want to see long hitters with good irons, and I don't really see any emphasis on around the green here. It's a resort course. There's not a lot of tricks to the greens complexes here. The greens themselves are pretty straightforward, and they're Paspalum, which usually levels the playing field between the weak and strong putters. So if you're long and you can hit your irons well, that's really the starting point. If you're somebody who is maybe a little erratic off the tee and maybe is like not super reliable around the green, those are some buy low targets, I think, for this week, because the fairways are wide open. You can't miss them. It's really a second shot course. So as I look down the board, and there are some values towards the bottom of the board, that's sort of the profile I'm looking for, just long hitters, irons, and can make enough putts to win what might be a birdie fest.
I know we have a couple long shots that we agree on that we'll touch on here at the end of the video, but just a little bit more about the course. As you mentioned, it is around 7,400 yards, par 71, but not your typical breakdown of a par 71. There are still 4 par 5s, but an extra par 3, 5 par 3s. For those par 3s, we're looking at yardages of 208, 174, 195, 170, and 226. And the par 5s, we have a 600-yarder, 603 to be exact, 637, and 585. So keep that in mind when you're looking at some players who, long iron strikers, good ball strikers with long irons, and also the bombers who can take advantage of those 600-yard plus par 5s. John also has here in his tournament preview the best comp courses as well, if you're interested in going to the tournament preview and reading about those comp courses. But what I also want to ask you about here right now, John, are the key stats to consider. You've already talked about it being a bomber's paradise with the length and not much of a rollout. You've also mentioned strokes gained on approach and strokes gained ball striking, in particular with long irons. Birdies are better gained because we need guys that are also going to convert on a course like this. And in particular with that iron play, you're looking at proximity from 200 plus yards from the green. All these stats we have here listed out, everybody can follow along in the video and the other ones you have listed here. What I'm curious about is when you're plugging this into the model that you're using this week, how much weight do you anticipate giving to driving distance? If you haven't entirely decided at this point, it's only Monday here on tournament week, maybe like a range that you're considering for driving distance, considering how important it appears to be for this course.
I put it in at 12.5% in mine, and I kind of combo stat, I put that percentage in a combination with strokes gained total on the 7,400 plus yards and the 200 plus proximity. That's all in sort of one bucket of, something that would be an advantage to a longer hitter. So between those things, those 3 categories together, probably at about a third of my model is tied up in those 3. So I think that's paramount here. We don't know exactly how this course is going to play, but we know that it's long. So I want that factored in here. And I think comp courses is pretty important. I think I'm somebody that puts a lot more stock in comp course history than most other people. But I think that's a good way to differentiate that there is a lot of guesswork when you come to a course we've never played before. So picking the right comp courses, I think, is very important here. And from that aspect, I think Cocoa Beach, where the Puerto Rico Open is, and Corrales, where the Corrales Punta Cana is, those are 2 long courses in the wind on Paspalum Green. So I think that's an easy place to start. And then beyond that, I really like TPC Craig Ranch as a comp for this. They had the first year of that being on the PGA Tour at the Byron Nelson last year, where KH Lee won. I think that's a really good comp here. It's also long with very little rollout. And it was the first time the field was sort of seeing that. So you get to see how players kind of respond the first time they're seeing a course. Also a good amount of wind there. So those are the big 3 that I'm looking at. And I threw a couple other longer courses in there too, but that's kind of where I started with my research.
And John has some names here of players who performed well both at TPC Craig Ranch and also at Punta Cana, that championship, and also the Puerto Rico Open. So you can check those names out here in his preview. Let's get right into it here, John, because, first of all, the longest hitters that we have in the field here, because this is what everybody's going to want to keep in the back of their head. Because we have a lot of names here that people aren't used to seeing on a week-to-week basis in the PGA Tour, unless you're an absolute diehard like you and me. But the top 10 longest hitters over their last 36 rounds in this field, Wyndham Clark, Joseph Bramlett, Brandon Hagee, Trey Mullinax, Cameron Champ, who those of you who have been following along from last season know we cashed at greater than 100-1 odds in the 3M Open a year ago in similar situation where it was a bomber's paradise. John Rahm, Peter Ulihan, Callum Tarrant, who I'm not going to lie to you, I've literally never heard of Callum Tarrant, so maybe you can tell me something about him. Gary Woodland and Curtis Thompson. So any names on that list in particular that stand out to you other than the obvious John Rahm?
Yeah, I got to tell you, Callum Tarrant was
that's a real
in the
name?
field.
That's a real person?
He was in the Zurich Classic, and that was my reaction to seeing him at the Zurich Classic. I'd never heard of him before that. Now I'd seen him play, I think, 2 rounds because I'm pretty sure they didn't make it through the cut. So he hits it a long way. That's all you really need to know about him, but I don't believe he does much else that well. So I probably won't be playing him this week. Gary Woodland is a guy I have a bet on. That's actually where I'm going to be starting my card. I got him at 28-1 just after Daniel Berger withdrew. He seems to be circling around a win this year, and he is somebody that maybe does rely a little bit more on the rollout with his distance. He tends to hit those stingers, those low rollers, so he won't be able to really do that here. But regardless, he's still a top 10 player in distance, so that's going to go a long way here, and he's been striking his irons well. Joseph Bramlett's another guy. I thought we would be getting one of those gross shortened odds here with this weak field. Mm-hmm. Fits the profile absolutely perfectly. Great ball striker, one of the longest hitters on tour. Not a great short game by any stretch of the imagination, but this is past Bowling Greens. This tends to be where the weaker putters have figured it out. So I also have a bet on him at 200-1. Long shot, but elite ball striker. So, rolling the dice. But it's a week you got to get comfortable getting a little ugly down at the bottom of the board. I'm
literally Googling Callum Tarrant as you were mentioning some of these guys you like in this group. And he's English. He played in the Puerto Rico Open where he finished T5. So there's your course comp history. And he's got the long, obviously long off the tee here. And he backed it up with that T5 at the Puerto Rico Open. So possibly somebody we shouldn't just completely throw out, considering he hits it far. He T5'd to the Puerto Rico Open, despite the fact that I literally didn't know he existed as of 120 seconds ago. So there you go. Learn something new. I guess
you could do a lot worse.
You could. In fact, you could do a lot worse. And your player spotlight is Isidro Benitez, which I thought was just the greatest troll since you've started writing columns for us. Got about 2 sentences in and said, okay, I'm kidding. The field is awful, but we are not that desperate to bet on Isidro Benitez from the PGA Tour LatAm sector. So you mentioned Scott Stallings here. We'll let people read why you like Scott Stallings a little bit later, but at the bottom of your piece, you have your breakdown on both odds and salary for DFS this week at DraftKings. You can look at some of the names that you are targeting for your lineups in that section. So last thing I'll just mention here, John, I know one long shot that I will be betting again after I cashed him in the 3M Open a year ago. I'm going to be betting Cameron Champ in this at 60-1. Not nearly as good as the 125-1 I got last year, but I know that's one I'm going to be betting. You will be coming out with your full betting card on Wednesday as usual, and the rest of our line staff will be sharing their betting cards in the Discord channel. You can find that by just going to the top right corner of thelines.com and clicking on that Discord button next to the Twitter button. And so you can find those later in the week. But for now, before we close up shop, any name you want to mention here in the early going that you jumped on, got a good number that you're worried might not be there come Wednesday night or Thursday?
Yeah, I would say Matt Jones is one that really stuck out to me. I think he was the first bet that I made this week at 65-1 on DraftKings, which he still is. I'm surprised to see that because I see him as low as 40 on other books, and he seems to be hanging around 50 most others. But looked great at the Valero Texas Open, could have easily won that. If this plays anything like the Birdie Fest, I think it could be. We know he has 30 under potential, like he showed us at the Century Tournament of Champions. He tends to do his best in windy conditions, where we saw him win the Honda. He credited just playing in Australia. A lot of these Aussies just play well in the wind. I am expecting there to be like 10-mile-an-hour sustained winds throughout this tournament, so nothing diabolical like we saw at like that Sawgrass, but I think it's going to be a bit of a factor, and he's a plus distance guy. So I think this course suits him really well. Again, it's a weak field. I thought he would be 30-1 or even less here. So I love the value on 65-1 Matt Jones.
I love it. Again, keep an eye out Wednesday for John's full betting card for the Mexico Open and the rest of our staff bets on the Discord channel. Let us know in the comments here who you are betting on and who you like for the Mexico Open, and hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. We are going to be doing golf content all season long. We've hit multiple outright so far and have come just tragically close to a bunch of guys already. I've had 6 guys finish 1 stroke off the leader this year, in addition to those 3 outright wins I've had personally. So the process is sound, and it's been a good season. And, we're up 30 plus units on my outright so far. I know a lot of members of our staff have been extremely profitable in the early going as well. And John, of course, as well, has been doing very solid work here with his deep dives and his, not just his outrights, but his top 10 markets, his first round leaders. Like, John, you're like the first round leader king, man. Like, I don't know how you do it, but it's friggin' awesome. And it's just a shame that Sebastian Munoz is such a short price this week, man.
Oh man, I haven't seen first round leaders odds out. Actually, there are some. So let's see. He's 40-1. Yeah, that's kind of what I expected. It's not great. That's not really my philosophy to bet anybody under 80-1 in a first round leader market, and that's usually where he lives. So I have to bet him. I have to bite the bullet there and go a little shorter. But came actually very close last week at the Zurich with Team Ryan Lipsky. They got to 11 under, which looked like that was going to be the number.
It took a 59 to beat you.
Yeah, you shoot 11 under and you don't hit first round leader. I guess you have to live with those consequences. But, like you said, the process is fine. Not going to hit every week, but hopefully the Mexico Open treats us a little better.
Absolutely, for sure. And I'll go place a top 10 bet on Callum Tarrant after discovering his existence literally in this video. So that should be fun as well. John, thanks.
Yeah, and I'll have a top 40 on Isidro Benitez too, just because I can't help myself.
The pride of the PGA Latino America Tour. Amazing. T19 finish in Puerto Vallarta, baby. Coming in hot. Oh, man. I love golf, man. I love it. I know you do, too. I love doing these videos with you. I love watching it all week long, all season long. So thanks again for joining us, and I hope this was helpful to everybody out there. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.